Hey y'all, it's Charla from the Hartzell Homestead. I'm here with you today to share about one of our favorite creative kits. It's the Stitch Sampler, little wood embroidery kit. It's got a nice hardboard with a white finish so that you can see your work. The kit comes with the practice board, little needle, a number 5 embroidery needle, but I've attached it to a craft stick so it doesn't get lost in the kit. A skein of embroidery thread to give you plenty for practicing, and then written instructions on the back. Now, we did decide to add on a video tutorial. I like to, when I'm learning something new, to watch, pause with a video. So we decided to add that in as an extra resource for you. Okay, now we do offer several different creative kits in wood embroidery. Now, these stitches you can use on any kind of embroidery, okay? You can use it on fabric, on paper, wood, any other kind of embroidery projects that you have. We just thought this is a fun way to learn, gives you something stable to hold on to, practice. This practice board gives you opportunity to practice the stitch, take it out, practice it again, or complete it and keep it in your embroidery bag or at your craft table as a resource so that you can see the stitch, remind yourself how to do it, or use it as a little decorative piece in your craft room. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate each one of the stitches. I won't complete the whole board in real time. I'm just going to show you how to start it, and that way you can watch this example over and over to help you along. Now, threading the needle is always the hardest part for me, but I've got a little tip I'm going to share with you. If you've got tape handy, I leave my thread all 6 strands, so it's a little thick when you're trying to get it through the eye of the needle. So if you take a little piece of tape, smush it down, and you might have to trim it if you get it too big. Trim it to the size of your eye. Throw that through there. Then, take that tape off so that it'll go through your holes and you're ready to go. Okay? That helps me to get mine through. That little bitty eye, all of those strands. Now, if you want to use fewer strands, you certainly may. With the wood embroidery, I like the thickness of the 6 strands left intact, but it's absolutely a personal preference. Okay, I'm going to start with the back stitch, the very first stitch that's on our board. Now, you do have an option if you want to tie a knot on the end of your thread so you don't pull it all the way through. You absolutely can. I kind of hold mine on the back so it leaves it a little more smooth, and then I do a flat knot on the end over here, but it's absolutely a personal preference. Now, on the back stitch, we're going to be working forward but going back 1 stitch at a time, exactly as the name implies. So we're going to begin in the 2nd hole on the board. We're going to put our needle through that hole from the back, pull the thread forward. Remember, I'm going to catch mine, right? Okay, so I'm going to catch it and just leave a little tail on the back. And then I'm going to go back 1 stitch and pull that back through. Okay, so now I'm going to skip the one I used, and I'm going to go to the next open hole on the back, pull through to the front, and then I'm going to go back a stitch and put that through that hole that I used previously. Now, you see how we're moving along cleanly? You move forward 1 stitch at a time, even though we're going back as we go. And then our working threads are all on the back side. So it gives a nice clean finish. So I'm going to skip the one I used here, and I'm going to go to the next open hole, pull the thread through, go back to that previous hole. This is a great stitch when you're wanting to create straight lines or even curved lines, because you can move through the curve. If you want to do text, if you're doing stems, you'll do the same thing right here when you're playing with the stems. It's just a wonderful little starter stitch. Okay. I'll show you a few more times. Let's split the stitch on the back there a little bit. Pull that flat. Okay, creates a nice clean line on the top of your project. All right, I'm going to fast forward you a few more stitches, and then I'll show you how I finish off the knot at the end. Now to finish off my knot on the end, all I do is take my needle, go parallel with the board, pull it under the thread of a previous stitch. Then when I get to a little loop at the end, I go back with my needle and catch that loop and then pull it tight. See how it pulled a nice little flat knot down? Okay, one more time. Through a previous thread, pick up that needle, pull through, and then catch that loop before it comes all the way through, and pull it tight. Okay, and just snip that end. All right, clean up this end down here. So there we have our back stitch. All right, let's move on to the stem stitch. All right, now with the stem stitch, we're going to be moving forward across the top of our board. We're going to be coming back a stitch to overlap from the back side this time, and our texture is going to come up onto the top. Gives us a forward moving line again. So you'll notice both of these create nice lines, but the stem stitch gives us a little texture with it. So I'm going to start with the first hole. Okay, pull up. I'm going to catch my thread at the back. I'm going to go through, skip this hole. I'm going to go through the third hole. Okay. Now, this is going to cross over the hole that we're going to be working with. So you want to kind of leave that a little bit loose while you're working and hold it down out of your way. If you split a thread, you can kind of smooth it down, but it's not ideal. Now I'm going to go back a stitch on the bottom, go through the hole that I skipped, and I'm going to pull that up, and then I'll pull that down and keep it a little tight. Now, then I'm going to go to the next stitch, next open hole, pull through, went down a little too far. Now I'm going to go through the previously used hole. I'm going to kind of stay at the top so that I can stay away from any of those threads, and I don't want to bring up any extra. I don't want to split the thread that I have on the top so it stays nice and smooth, and then I'm going to pull it down. Okay, again, skip that used hole, go to the next open hole, go through the top, pull that loop down just a little bit out of the way. I'm going to go back to my previously used hole. I'm kind of staying at the top of that hole, away from the threads if possible. Then I'm going to pull that on through. Now see how we're moving forward, but we've got a little movement in the way the thread is coming with us as we go. So it gives a little texture. This is great for stems. You could use it here on this stem if you wanted, as well as the back stitch. Either one, just a personal preference on what you like in the way your stitch looks in the end. Okay, I'll do a couple more, then I'll let you practice that on your own. So I'm going to go to the next open hole, go down from the top, go back to the previously used hole, come up, try not to catch your threads, and then pull it down. It's a nice stitch. Whoop, there we go. It happens. Threads are starting to loosen up. finish the end of that line. Nice pretty little stitch line. I'm going to go back and do the same thing that I did here to finish off underneath the previous stitch with my needle and thread, and before that comes all the way back with me, I'm going to take my needle through, then pull it down. Okay, one more time. Almost missed that one. There we go. And then snip. All right, 2 great line stitches practiced. Now let's move on to that lazy daisy. We've got a stem, and we're going to put some leaves on it. Now you could change colors as you're working if you're working on an overall pattern that would require a little bit of different artistry. I'm going to use the same thread because it's easy for you to see the contrast against the white, and it's just a practice board. So it's totally up to you on how you're working with this particular design of a stitch. I'm going to back stitch up the middle, then work on my petals as I come back down. Okay, so back stitch means I'm going to skip the first. I'm going to go into this one, this first large hole here. Notice these middle holes are larger because we're going to be working in and out of those multiple times. Okay, now I am going to hold the thread again to the side because I want to reduce knots back here. It gets a little crowded. All right, back to that first open hole, pull that down. Then I'm going to skip the used hole there, move on up to the next empty space, and work back. Okay, skip and move up to the next empty hole and back. Split the thread coming back, so I'm going to need to pull that down, clean that up a little. There we go. Okay, next empty hole and back. Try to miss the thread this time so I don't get that split. Okay, now that's the end of the stem work in this little set of leaves. So now I'm going to be working from this top hole that I just finished, and I'm going to build that leaf shape. Okay, so I'm going to go back in that hole right here. I'm going to hold my thread to the side and go back down in that same hole, trying to miss my threads on the bottom as much as I can so I don't split and cause a knot. It's happened. Okay, then this open hole here at the top, I'm going to take my needle through, and I want to catch that loop, pull it down a little, and create that leaf shape. Now, I'm going to go on the outside of the thread that I just caught for that loop and go back down in the same top hole to finish that shape. Okay, now I'm going to move back down to this hole to work these two. Now on the back, it's hard to, oh, I don't want to pull that too tight. I'm going to leave that a little loose so I see a little shape. Okay, I'm going to skip that one, and I want to find this one. Okay, again, up. Hold the thread off to this side over here, down in the same hole. Hold that loop just so it doesn't go all the way through. Then you're going to go out to this end, find that hole, give myself a little more room. There. Dropped it. Try that again. There. Catch it. Pull down just enough to give it a little definition. Then go on the top side of that thread that I just pulled down, go back through. Okay, then I'm going to go back again and find that hole on the back side, to work through again. There we are. Okay, hold that thread to the side. I'm going to go back again, trying to stay on the outer edge of this hole so that I'm not creating a knot with all the threads in that same hole. It helps if you can do that. Okay, find the end of that leaf out here and pull down. Then close that on the outer side of that thread. Okay, all right. Now I'll work on down. All right, now we're going to use that same stitch technique that we just learned here. If you need to practice it, take it out, do it again. But here we're going to use that stitch to create a little flower and then a little a leafy fan right here. Both of these might be decorative elements that you use in another project. Okay, so again, you're going to notice this hole is larger, so we're going to be working out of that center hole. So I'm going to come up from the back. Again, I'm not going to knot my thread just because I don't want that knot to interfere in my working space. I'm just going to hold it off to the side back here until I get enough work to secure it. Remember, I'm going to go back through that open hole. Now, if I pull it all the way through, it's just going to come right back out. There's nothing securing that yet. Got a lot of thread. Let me pull that. Okay. Now, I'm going to catch that loop so that I can hold some working thread on the top. Then I'm going to bring, I think it's this one, bring my needle from the bottom, pull that up to create a petal. Okay, and then I'm going to secure that petal down by going on the outside of that thread and back through that outer hole. To be careful that my thread doesn't not have a longer strand I'm working with now. There. I'm going to clean up some of my back threads just for my working purposes. Keep that one out of the way. Alrighty. Now, again, working from that center hole up. Hold that thread out where I want to create my next petal, back through the center hole, trying not to split the thread so we don't create a knot situation, just to make it a little easier, okay? Then I'm going to come up through this petal hole and back down. There we go. So it's the same process that we were doing here, but instead of going back and forth, we're just going to go around in a circle and create a nice little flower. Now let's hop over here and I'll get you started on that and let you finish that out. The only difference here is that you have 2 working holes. This one is for that top petal. The rest of them are going to work out of this bottom hole, okay? So we're going to start, I'm just leaving it since I'm just going to hop over here, leaving it attached to my previous practice. And remember, I'm going to go back down. Up. And then back down over the top to create that top leaf of this little fan. Okay. Then when I move down to the bottom, I'm going to come out of this hole and I'm just going to work these 4 out of this same hole. Alrighty, let's get to work learning the Colonial Knot now. Get my thread in here. Done one as an example because you can kind of see where we're going with it. You've got 2 sets of practice holes. It takes 1 hole for each one of these Colonial Knot stitches. And we're going to do a couple different variations. Then you've got a little practice project here where you can practice making Colonial Knots in the shape of a leaf or a little flower. These Colonial Knots are a great little texture element you can add as part of your design, or they can be fun little, picked up another thread, let me get that out of there. Fun little extra flowers in your project. Alrighty, so I'm coming up from the back. I'm gonna hold my thread here off to the side. Okay, Now, what we're going to do is just wrap our needle, okay? So I put this down so you can kind of watch me a little bit. I'm going to go under and pick up that thread. Then I'm going to take this working thread and I'm going to go over the back. Okay, let me do that again. So I'm going to pick up the thread by the hole. I'm going to pick up my working thread and I'm going to wrap one time. Okay, this is for a basic colonial knot. Then I'm going to go back through the same hole. Now I've had to practice this dozens of times. Here's what I found. Make sure it helps. Hold this extra thread as you're working all of it through that hole so it doesn't get an extra knot. Okay, and then as you get that through there, keep pulling the extra thread. See how it makes an extra little loop over here? Hold that just gently as you work the knot to the hole. Working slowly helps me a little bit more than pulling it fast. If I pull it too fast, I knot it too quickly. All right, let's do one more. And if you need to see this over and over and over, just back up and watch again. I have practiced this several times, but this is why you also have a lot of practice space here in these little projects. So, okay, so I've brought my thread through the back. I'm going to pick up the thread, and then I'm going to take this extra and I'm going to wrap it. Okay. Pick up the thread, take the extra, I'm going to wrap it like this. And then I'm going to just hold it out of place, going back through the same hole. I'm going to bring all that excess and see how I'm pulling this as I go, just so that my knot doesn't happen before all of this makes it to the hole. Ta-da. They're really cute little design elements. It adds a lot of texture to your project. Just a little knot on top of your board or your fabric or your paper, whatever you're working on. Hey, this little variation is just an extra loop. Let's practice that one. Coming up from the back. Okay, so we're going to pick up our thread, loop, and loop. It's just a little bit larger. Go back through that same hole. And again, let me get that through there. I'm gonna hold this extra out here while all of this thread works through that hole so I don't get a knot too early. Speaking from experience. Just gonna kind of walk it to the hole. Pick that up just a little bit and give it some room. See, I got some of it there a little too soon, so I'm going to pull that up. There we go. And then give that a tug on through. There. This wants to keep popping up, okay? Let's do that again. Pick it up. 1, 2, and back through. I'm going to watch for that this time. Make sure that excess over here doesn't get caught in the knot. Yeah, there we go. Better. Okay, one more time through the back. Okay. Pick it up. Loop and loop. Now, you can practice either one of these variations. I'm almost pulling this one through too far. In your leaf or your flower. Have fun. Alrighty, the last stitch that we're going to learn on our practice board is the woven wheel. And it's a fun little in and out around some spokes weaving pattern that makes a beautiful little floral. I'm going to come up through the center and down through a spoke. You're just going to go in and out until you get all of the spokes complete. Okay, when you go back through the center, you're going to need to come back up this hole. Notice again, it's a larger working hole. So just kind of cross over one of your threads from a previous stitch just to give it something to tug onto and not pull all the way back through. Then we're going to start a weaving pattern. We're going to go under and over, just like we're weaving a basket or a pot holder or anything like that. You're going to go under one. If you go under one, the next one you go over. So I'm going to go over this one and then under this one. Okay, so if I went under, move this out of the way. If I went under this one, I'm going to go over this one and then back under here. So I'm just going to move across. Okay, now we're back where we started. So I went under here, I'm going to go over here and under here. Okay, so I went under, I'm going to go over and back under over here. So you continue this pattern, and as you do so, you're creating this little round floral around this wheel. So I went under, so I'm going to go over and back under here. Notice this one takes a little more working room on your board. So if you are working on a project, whether it be board, fabric, paper, any of that, you need a little bit of needle room. So it's a tip to start with this stitch if it's anywhere in your pattern of stitches for your project. So I went under that, I'm going to go over this one and back under here. I'm going to skip that and pull that through. I'm going to do the same thing to finish it out. I like this one. Now you can do this stitch with double thread to make it thicker. Like this larger one would take several times around with the single thread, so you could double your thread and cover ground a little bit faster if you choose to. Okay. Let's go a couple more rounds, cover that spoke look. Whoop, see there? Catches a previous stitch, so I have to be careful. See, I came in under, so I'm going to go over here and under over here. Try to get a couple more. There we go. I want it to be full, but I also need to make sure I have enough string to go down when I'm finished. Okay, I don't want to pull it too tight, so let me go ahead. Just going to take this extra thread and do one more move straight through the top of the board to the bottom and pull that through. Got myself a little crowded. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle off. Okay, then once you're finished, you can go up and maneuver that thread. Give your loops a little more fullness. Okay. That is a really cute little stitch. I like that a lot. Now, you could also come back if you wanted to get a little bit of yellow, a little bit of green, and put a little center in there. You could do that with a little French knot, either the double over or the single, either one. Okay, it's a fun little variation. All right, I hope you've enjoyed learning these stitches, and I hope you have a good time practicing and learning a new skill and craft. Have fun.